Hi everybody, it's Brother Brett, pastor of people at Prince of Peace Lutheran Church. Today this is part one of our communion bread recipe and how we prepare it and make it at Prince of Peace. Part two will be the actual baking it, but this will be the part before it's baked and when it rises. So we start with 2/3 cup of 110 degrees Fahrenheit water. And then to that we add active yeast, a half a teaspoon and a little bit. And then I take the whisk, just incorporate it a little bit, and let it sit a moment. The wet ingredient is the water, 110 degrees, with the half a teaspoon and a little bit of active yeast. And then the other wet ingredient is a tablespoon of rose water and a tablespoon of orange blossom water. Both are found at Middle Eastern markets, and this adds a little bit of uniqueness to it. This recipe originally comes from the Coptic Orthodox Christian community for their communion bread with some variations. So a tablespoon of each of one of the rose, one of the orange blossom. So we'll use that in a moment. Then in the mixer, I use a simple paddle for the attachment, and we use 2 cups of bread flour already measured out. To the 2 cups of bread flour, we add 2 tablespoons of sugar and a half a teaspoon of salt. And that particular salt is a bread salt, doesn't matter, any kind of salt will do. I just use this to incorporate it a little bit, just to mix up what's there. Then, once that's mixed, you dump in your liquid, and then I always take the orange blossom water and the rose water and pour it into here to kind of swirl off any extra and incorporate that. I usually turn up the mixer a little bit, no faster than that. And as you can see, it's still a bit dry, and it really depends on the time of year. So I usually need to add a little bit more water, and let me show you how I do that. Not always. Sometimes it's actually just enough. But I'll take the measuring cup and just drizzle a tiny bit down the side and see what it does. And what you're looking for is it to mix and incorporate that it pretty much makes the bowl clean. But you don't want the bread too sticky though, then it becomes a mess to work with over here. And looks like we're there. So we're gonna let it continue to mix a moment. Don't take any more off the sides. It's not a heavily kneaded dough. This is not one that we knead for a very long time, but we just allow it to work inside the bowl here a little bit. Try to bring off anything else off the sides. Should be pretty good. So I turn off the mixer, I bring up the plate. Now sometimes it'll stick a little bit to the paddle and you can just pull it off, but there's hardly any other thing here that's stuck to the paddle. So there we go, and here's what it looks like. So we're gonna dump it out over here onto the floured board that we have, and we're gonna fold it over just a couple times. Kind of fold it lengthwise. And the dough's nice and warm from the water still. then one last time. Well, maybe another, still there's a little bit here. So, and so again, it doesn't have to be kneaded for a very long time at all. The cups don't need it for a long time. So then I make a little loaf of it, turned over the seal here. I'm sure there's better ways to do it, but this is the method that I do. Then we're going to divide it into thirds. And I take the two sections that I'm not working with and set them underneath the towel. Then I usually take the middle section first and turn it over, and then I push it down with my hand to try to work on making it a circle. Now I have found some people are really good, they can do this all with their hands. The smaller loaves I usually can do, but this I usually need to use a rolling pin. And so I'm looking to make this third not too thin, about probably 1/4 inch thick, and we're looking for it to be 6 inches around. So we have the 6-inch piece here, 6-inch cutter, and so I'll cut down and pull up the extra, tamp it down into a ball because we will use this for something else later. Put it underneath. I remove the ring, and then we have the piece cutter. This will put in how we divide it easily, and so it'll make impressions on it. So you kind of line it up on the sides here, and then I push down. I just make sure you don't push all the way through, but you can put a good deal of pressure on it. And as you can see, it often will stick, so I just put my finger through, and then it'll start to come off. Wow. Once it's there, then I flip it over. And then we have the seal, the big seal that we use here. It's put in this dish of flour, and then the flour is tapped off. And it really doesn't matter how you put it, because it's round. So what I do is, though, I set it on, and then I make sure it's centered. I use my fingers here to make sure there's kind of the same distance from all the edges. And then once you've done that, you put pressure on it from the top, and then take it off, and there it is. So usually I find that it does stick a little bit to the board after you add all that pressure. I scoop it up and then set it over here to start rising. And then we do the same thing with the next two pieces. So we'll do that real quick, just so you can watch. I found if I take the dough off before I lift up the ring, even though I've cut it, sometimes even if I've cut it and pull the dough off, it does funky things to the inside circle. It makes it shrink up somehow. Try to get it centered and then push down. Again, pretty firm. And voila. There it is, flip it over. Take the seal, tamp it off. Your fingers, try to see that it's centered as much as possible. Push down. And remove. And then there's one more of these, which we will do. See, it's stuck already. Now I try to incorporate these together because I'm going to make 3 small ones with the leftover here. And they can be used for communion later in the week for shut-ins. They can be just eaten. They can be given as hospitality gifts. So let that sit there. Again, center, press, lift, flip. Check that it's centered and press. I'm using a good deal of pressure when I'm doing this, so okay, they aren't going to rise that much, so they don't have to be too far apart. All right. For the last little bit here, this will make anywhere from 2 to 3 additional little itty bitty loaves, and so I'm gonna, this one to me, I think it's gonna make more than like 2. It depends on all kinds of factors. And so this one will be kind of on the thicker side, which is fine. And I use a tin can that I have cut off the top and cleaned, of course. And cut it. And then I have this little itty bitty stamp. Place it in the center. Push, not too hard on this one. There we are. And put here, and then our other piece of dough. And the cross is the cross, and the Jesus Christ Victor, the Greek letters for that. It's also in the large one, traditional symbol for communion bread. And I don't think I'm going to get one out of this. Although it's a tiny little piece, I might just see what I can do. So what I'm going to do then is, I'll play with this, but you don't need to see it in the thing. I cover it with a towel, tea towel, and then it sits for 30 minutes to an hour. Generally for me, it's almost always an hour. Although it's starting to get warmer, it might be better. So then the next video, video number 2, is we'll talk about what we do once the bread has risen a little bit, and then how to bake it. And there's a little process there on how to do that properly. So I'll see you in the next video.